Good morning, everybody. The video today is about shadow work, cycle breakers of generational trauma, and rigid patterns. See, today the message is just a reflection and a confirmation to keep on going in the same direction and finally seeing something in the chaos, patterns emerging. I personally perceived life as, when I'm looking back, and I think many people could relate to that potentially, when I'm looking back as at being a child and a young man growing up, I'm surrounded by a chaos, and this is the same for an infant. An infant cannot even see shapes and patterns because everything is just merging into everything. It's just a multitude of things without shape and contours and patterns. And then we train pattern recognition, and suddenly things emerge. And this repeats. So when you get older, train your eyes and your brain to recognize patterns. Um, Now you learn about things at school from parents, from people around you, and there is one opinion about everything and a thousand opinions about everything and a thousand teachings about what is right and wrong and a lot of contradictive voices. So at some point it can feel overwhelmed, like, all right, I can learn all of this and there is a lot of interesting things, like I like martial art to make metaphors often, and martial art is nothing else but philosophy. Um, so I could use philosophy as well. But so there is different styles, and all of them are good. But there is no true and right style. Okay, so you can do Chinese kung fu, you can do Japanese fighting styles. You can do Thai boxing or even more ancient versions of that. Or there is a thousand ways to learn martial art, and there is a thousand philosophies connected to this. While some can be reduced, to rather Eastern philosophies of Wu Wei or Taoism, and some might go in other directions. But what I'm trying to say is it repeats that there is a multitude of things that don't make sense because there is something in every direction and there is affirmation in every direction, as well as um, contradiction or opposing voices. And what ultimately makes the difference is your intuition or discernment, your understanding and feeling in filtering out what is right or wrong for you. And then again, you find your way, you find patterns, it all makes sense finally. Like you feel you venture out onto an ocean and there is no land in sight, but finally you learn how to digest and discard 95% of everything, but you keep that what you need, the nutrients, the important structure, the material that you're made of. And and then again, you hit a limit. So um, you live in your life until you realize certain things happening and you get into this, what we call the dark night, dark night of the soul, or a make or break situation, some form of crisis, because for some reason you're pushed to make a huge change in your life. And this is when you start shadow working, because in all this process that I have just described, there were things that were not on your radar, or you avoided them, or you somehow they did not manifest in your awareness and consciousness. All right. And then you start breaking these patterns. This is how cycle breakers work. They don't stop evolving, they don't stop learning, and they don't stop unlearning. So at some point, you looked at yourself, and you changed the way you are. You cut dependencies to people. You keep asking people for certain things that feel off for you. And yeah, this led to interesting developments in your life. And now everything has changed again, because you changed yourself. You need to understand there's people who are operating on rigid patterns, and they take it for granted that you allow them to operate from these patterns, and they liked the spot in the hierarchy they had. They were in some way controlling and directing, speaking from, you could say, from a parental perspective, but you can also say from a controlling perspective, from looking down to you. They were used to have the last word, whether overtly by being in the role of directing and you accepting it, or by manipulative way that feigns or fakes equality and the power of balance, but at the end they maintain control through micromanaging in the background, or subtly manipulating your perception and reality. But thank God, thank God, you have the ability to break this, to understand this. And you had to stand up against whole family clans simultaneously, because when you change yourself, when you break these patterns, when you insist on real equality, a lot of people, more than you think, will turn against you. But it's, again, not as many as you think, because the most of the people don't want to have to do anything with that. They just living their own life and have small connections to you and your surroundings. And when something emerges, something is erupting, something is happening, they just don't want to have to do with it. And the more influential, the more manipulative, the more desperate narration, the more coerced control is what will reach them. And then they will just think, I don't want to be bothered with this. Whatever happened, I don't care. We just step back, and this leads to isolation for individuals who break cycles. But it's the only thing. It's important. This form of isolation is important, because when you rearrange yourself, when you do this restart, this pattern breaking, you can't live, or you can't stay in the same environment. You need to build new connections to do this, based on real equality, because that's where it started in the first place. You played your role, and this role determined the shape of your environment. And you have outgrown your environment. You need new shoes, you need new clothes. There is enough people who want to wear your old shoes and clothes, and they will not be able to do this anyway, because that what you have outgrown is too huge and too big for those who try to imitate you. So that being said, it's just an affirmation to keep on going in the same direction. When you walk focused and keep educating yourself, keep trusting your intuition, it happens so many times that patterns emerge and you break through, even though sometimes we walk through dark times, through the valley of the shadow of death, through periods of thirst and isolation and sacrifice. But that's the price authenticity requires, and personal development requires, readjustment requires. We don't go in circles, we don't jump in the next dysfunctional relationship immediately. We don't distract ourselves. At times, we readjust. And yeah, I just want to give you the courage to keep on going. It's like when you are in training, running and working out, and you have 1,000 times become sick and had a huge setback, and then you find yourself 1,000 times again running up that hill and getting out of breath again because you had this setback. You get back to your old form and even get better. And the same is with the pattern recognition and the purpose in life. As an infant, you did it the first time. Finally, you managed to see the shape of your mother's face, her gaze. You recognize when she smiles at you, and you learn to see objects. You can now extend your hand toward your object and grab it and take it. And then again, as a young man or a child or a young woman, you learn the things you have to learn, and you have success and get feedback for that. And suddenly the world is a chaos again because there's so much to learn. But then at some point, you figure out things. You can maneuver. You can do everything. And then again, you hit some invisible wall, and then you get into a crisis. It pushes you, and then you start shadow working. You find out about psychology and about your blind spots, what you missed, what has been hidden. And now suddenly there's chaos again. But you keep going, and again, patterns emerge and it all makes sense again. And this is just a process of an infinite process that is like the Mandelbrot set. Um, you can check out the Mandelbrot set, which are these natural patterns that have self-similarity, like the leaf of a tree has the same shape as the tree itself in many cases. And this is also the nature of life. It's infinity within limits. It's not infinite infinity, but it's got a set frame that is huge, and within this frame there is a form of limited infinity. So keep on going. Thank you for listening. See you in the next video.